he's a legend of the game. I just asked him, actually, I asked him, I go, what's one tip that you would give? He goes, stay patient. He goes, when you're not rushing in, you're very dangerous. When you wait, you're a very good counter puncher. And you've got very, very fast hands. And very reactive. So I think that's what made me win the fight.
Tim Tszyu just dominated Errol Spence Jr. with a unanimous decision in Sydney, and now claims that Terence Crawford handed him the secret blueprint to exploit Spence's weaknesses.
Even watching Errol in the previous fights, he's very, again, one-dimensional. He sort of doesn't have that.
Tim Tszyu also breaks down how he studied high-volume pressure styles to prepare for his fight against Errol Spence Jr.
But I was watching Benavidez. I watched him against Ramirez, and Ramirez is the same. He throws a lot of punches, but then Benavidez, what he does was he was able to control it, be able to block it. It was his front hand, front guard, strong guard, and then let go with crazy combinations, sort of trying to get that.
Meanwhile, Errol Spence Jr., after going the distance in a grueling battle, admits the overwhelming physical toll of the fight. The former champion admits that facing that level of punishment made him realize it was officially time to walk away from the sport.
There's no reason to fight, man. You know, I answered a lot of questions tonight for myself personally, and you know, going 12 rounds and, you know, realizing how long that 12 rounds was. You know, it's time to hang them up because that 12 rounds isn't that long, but it was a long 12 rounds tonight, so it's time to, you know, to hang them up.
Addressing the harsh reality of a long layoff, Errol Spence Jr. breaks down how his body felt during and after the fight. He openly concedes that stepping back into the ring against an elite opponent proved his time at the top had come to an end.
The first 3 rounds, it felt okay. You know, I wasn't nervous or anything like that. The first 3 rounds felt okay. After the fight, I was sore. I don't remember 12 rounds feeling like that. Like, you know, that's how I knew, like, it's time to hang him up. Like, you can't be off that long and then come back and think you can fight a 12 round fight. You know what I'm saying? With a caliber opponent like that.
Tim Tszyu also addresses the cold reality of sending a legend into retirement after their high-stakes showdown. Tszyu explains the fierce, eat-or-be-eaten mindset he had to adopt when stepping into the ring against a fighter of Errol Spence Jr.'s caliber.
Look, at the time, it's not a personal thing, but it was just, that's what I wanted to do. You know, it's either he does it to me or I do it to him.
Paulie Malignaggi offers a poignant tribute to Errol Spence Jr.'s warrior spirit while analyzing the exact moment the former champion's body gave out. Malignaggi breaks down how a lifetime of grueling battles and heavy wear and tear ultimately caught up to Spence in the final rounds.
Errol tried. I gave Errol credit for the gutsiness. The heart of a champion just never leaves you. And Errol, I thought, you know, pushed himself. Regardless of the 12th round that he gave away, he pushed himself so hard around 11 that I could just sense it. I felt for him that, you know, he had nothing left around 12. You don't have enough gas in the tank anymore when the odometer is run so high, and Errol has run the odometer a lot of mileage on the tank. Like I said, a lot of tough sparring, physical fighting style throughout his career. He was one of the better champions of the generation, and a job well done and a great career to Errol Spence, who we got to congratulate in retirement.
Highlighting the massive impact of this victory, Paulie Malignaggi explains how Tim Tszyu victory elevates Australian boxing on the global stage. He discusses how Tim's rise continues to expand an iconic combat sports dynasty alongside his brother Nikita's own championship pursuit.
Tszyu is a really big product in boxing in Australia, so if this guy continues to, you know, work his way back into the mix or even win a world championship, it is very good for Australian boxing, and you know, it creates one of those dynamic stars. Both for the reason that Tim is a star already, but also it's a legacy at this point. You know, the Tszyu legacy. Kasha, the father, was very good. Tszyu is working his way into title contention as he's got it was announced tonight that he has a world title eliminator coming up, an IBF World Title Eliminator at light middleweight against Ben Mahoney. So the Tszyu name continues to rise here tonight in Australia.
Meanwhile, Chris Algieri breaks down a diminished performance, pointing out that Errol Spence Jr. looked heavy-footed and far below his prime form. Algieri notes how Spence was repeatedly off balance, yet Tim Tszyu missed key opportunities to capitalize on his vulnerable opponent.
Yeah, Spence, listen, our pick was based on Spence nostalgia. And we said, like, listen, if we can get 70% of Spence, we got a real fight. That was not 70% of Spence. That was much degraded. That was less than 50. Yeah, I was gonna
48.
say less than 50. I had people in my DMs being like, that was 30% Spence. I'm like, yeah, it was nowhere near 70. His legs looked like they were cast in iron. He could not move his legs with any there was no bounce. He didn't bounce at any point during the fight. There was no in and out, just heavy-footed. Every time he threw the left hand, he threw it like with everything he had, fell over his front feet. And there were so many opportunities for Tszyu to take advantage of a wounded animal in front of him, and he just didn't. And you could hear Jeff Fenech screaming at him in the corner.
Analyzing the early workload and round-by-round output, Chris Algieri highlights how Errol Spence Jr. burned through his energy early trying to hold off Tim Tszyu. Algieri commends Spence for showing incredible heart to fight through exhaustion without getting stopped.
The numbers seemed wild to me because I thought, you know, Spence was working so hard those first 4 rounds, and that's where I gave him a couple rounds. But
well, the first 4 rounds, Spence was they were pretty close in total punches landed.
After the first 4 rounds, I was like, Spence is not seeing the end of this fight because he was working so hard. He was burning.
Spence 71 punches in round 1, 95 in round 2, 76 in round 3, and then he hit 93 in round 5. Then he fell off.
Yeah. So the first half of the fight, Spence was working way too hard, but he had to because he had a bigger man in front of him. Have you ever seen Spence hold? He was holding in the fight. I've never seen him clinch.
That wasn't Errol Spence that we saw.
No.
I mean. But it wasn't like he didn't embarrass himself.
He was valiant.
He didn't get stopped.
His valiant effort.
Stopped. He did not want to end his career on the Crawford loss.
Adding to the discussion, Antonio Tarver commends the brave effort shown by Errol Spence Jr. while saluting a legendary career that has officially come to a close. Tarver notes how Tim Tszyu winning game plan successfully neutralized Spence's signature forward pressure.
And Tim Tszyu knew that they couldn't allow Errol to back them up. You know, Errol is noted for that pressure, effective pressure, but it wasn't to be last night. But a courageous fight nonetheless, very courageous. He stood in there, he did what he do best, he fought, you know what I mean? I saw a lot of bad habits and, you know, sometimes, in order to get better, bro, you're gonna have to, really address some of those, bad habits. But he's had a Hall of Fame career. The big fish from Dallas, bro. One of the most dominant welterweights of this era. And we're going to miss him. We're going to miss him, bro.
Breaking down the tactical flaws inside the ring, Antonio Tarver points out missed offensive opportunities and defensive lapses during the exchanges between Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu. He explains why stepping away was the smartest decision for Spence, while offering a blunt assessment of both fighters' true skill levels.
Smart guy, always been smart. You're not going to see Errol just jumping in there, putting his body in harm's way when he know, even at his best, he can't compete with the elite right now. And I'm not saying Tim Tszyu was elite by far, not even close, but he did come in a lot more comfortable, and the surroundings could have had something to do with that. But he never was able to drop Errol. He never was able to really hurt Errol. Errol just kept with the left hand, he was banging, but he kept falling in. Every time he fell in, he would grab instead of punch. And I thought those were opportunities there, that he didn't take advantage of. But they exchanged shots. Nobody really got hurt bad where they were, had the equilibrium all off and everything. I didn't see anybody's legs buckle really bad. I didn't see anybody really get hurt. But definitely some punches was landed.
Even pound-for-pound star Terence Crawford, with whom Errol had the last fight, notices early physical signs of fatigue and discouragement during the fight. He tweeted, Body language is not looking good. Crawford analyses the physical disparity inside the ring, pointing out how Tim Tszyu punch power was clearly making the difference. He stated, "Tim is stronger and just got more snap on his shots. You can see he's taking Spence's shots better than Spence is taking his." Crawford delivers a sharp observation regarding Errol Spence Jr.'s sharp decline in speed and defensive reaction time. He said, "Reflex is gone." Meanwhile, George Rose demands respect for the dominant statement made inside the ring, shutting down any excuses surrounding the former champion's preparation. He highlights why dethroning a legend like Errol Spence Jr. stands out as a defining masterpiece in Tim Tszyu's career.
I think he deserves a lot of credit for what he did, given the journey that he's been on as well. I think coming into this fight, a lot of people said that they don't know what they'll see because you don't know what you're going to get from Errol, you don't know what you're going to get from Tim. I think he deserves credit for the performance that he put on, for how strong and how dominant he was. And Errol himself said that he felt ready, that he felt good coming into that fight. So give it the respect that it deserves. It was a good win. It was a very, very good win. Where you want to rate it, amongst other wins, it's up to each person. But for Tim Tszyu to beat a legend, a great American boxer in Errol Spence Jr., I think that's something that he deserves credit and will be one of his greatest wins.
Showbiz the Adult dismisses past injuries and durability concerns, pointing to a different reason for Errol Spence Jr.'s struggles against Tim Tszyu. He explains how the unavoidable effects of aging caught up to Spence inside the ring.
Why Errol Spence performed like that last night wasn't because of the car accident. There were a lot of questions about Errol Spence's durability going into that fight. He took a beating from Tim Tszyu, a 160-pound Tim Tszyu, for 12 rounds. Hit the Tyson bell. It wasn't the durability that caused that performance last night. It was Father Time. It was that magic boxing age of 35, 36. See, there's 34, right, when you start hitting the top of the hill, and then 35 is over the hill, and then 36, 37.
Contextualizing Errol Spence Jr.'s defeat against Tim Tszyu, Showbiz the Adult draws comparisons to historical ring legends who hit the same inevitable wall. He details how age eventually catches up to even the greatest fighters in boxing history.
Errol Spence, 36 years old. For the most part, the great boxers who lived life like a fighter, they all just dropped off around 35, 36. Sugar Ray Robinson had no business dropping a fight than winning a fight against the likes of Gene Fullmer at 35 and Carmen Basilio at 36. Sugar Ray Robinson in his 20s would have cooked both of those dudes. Sugar Ray Leonard was 34 years old and 9 months when he lost to Terry Norris. A prime Sugar Ray Leonard would have smoked Terry Norris. Muhammad Ali, when he was 35, he lost to Leon Spinks. He won the rematch and then he said goodbye. Should have retired forever, but nah, he came back, losing to Larry Holmes and Trevor Burbick. Iron Mike Tyson at 36, he was knocked out by Lennox Lewis.
Even Ryan Garcia weighed in on social media right after the fight, with a blunt message about Errol Spence Jr.'s future in boxing, following his loss to Tim Tszyu. Garcia admits he saw the defeat coming and urges the former champion to call it a career. He tweeted, "It was pretty clear that Errol was going to lose. It's time for Errol to retire." Showing admiration for his career, Garcia points out that the former champion hasn't looked the same in a long time. He stated, "Nothing but respect for Errol, but he hasn't been in his top form for a long time." Wishing him well outside the ring, Garcia reinforces that it is time to walk away for good. Ryan said, "I hope the best for him in his retirement and for his life. But hang it up. Protect your health." Legendary Australian trainer Johnny Lewis praises Tim Tszyu, command of the ring, and victory over Errol Spence Jr. Lewis highlights how key corner adjustments under Jeff Fennick elevated Tszyu performance to another level.
Good performance by Tim. I thought he controlled it and dictated it. I thought he won well.
What do you make of Jeff in his corner? Obviously a victory is a great thing.
Well, he's a lot better than what he's had in there in the past.
Expressing his excitement for the sport, Johnny Lewis reacts passionately to Tim Tszyu dominant performance. Lewis explains why he had complete confidence in Tszyu's victory over Errol Spence Jr. long before the final scorecards were read.
Well, it's breathing fire into our sport, so wonderful, wonderful.
Did you see it as wide as the cards were? Did you see it as wide as the cards were?
I never had a doubt that he won. I thought he went capable.
Former champion Jamel Herring laments how time spent away from the ring visibly caught up to Errol Spence Jr. as the rounds went on. He tweeted, "I love my brother, but that layoff and ring rust showed up and still hasn't worn off this deep in the fight." Regis Prograis also offers his heartfelt congratulations to Errol Spence Jr., while acknowledging his stellar career following his decision to step away from boxing. He stated, "Congratulations, Errol Spence Jr. Enjoy retirement, champ. One hell of a career." Sean Zittel maps out the steady physical regression of Errol Spence Jr., pinpointing exactly when his footwork and overall performance began to decline leading up to the Tim Tszyu bout. He breaks down how each subsequent ring appearance revealed further deterioration in the former champion's game.
The truth is, his balance was off from the Ugas fight, and he was always a heavy on the front foot kind of guy. Now, his balance was much better once upon a time than it's been his last 3 fights. But I'm going to say this. Errol Spence's peak was around the Lamont Peterson fight, and then the Mikey Garcia fight was his peak, and I think he got progressively worse every fight since then. The Errol Spence that fought Sean Porter was not as sharp as the Errol Spence that fought Mikey. The Errol Spence that fought Danny Garcia was not as sharp as the Errol Spence that fought Sean Porter. The guy who fought Ugas, that's where the balance really started to begin to show a lot of ugly signs if you go back and watch that fight. And I at least said that the night before the fight on our emergency podcast. Spence wasn't as good in the Ugas fight as he was against Danny. And then he wasn't as good against Crawford as he was against Ugas. And then he wasn't as good last night as he even was against Crawford.
Assessing the post-fight landscape, Sean Zittel evaluates Errol Spence Jr.'s ultimate Hall of Fame credentials, while analyzing what lies ahead for Tim Tszyu. He outlines how Tszyu secured a signature victory over an aging legend and where he fits in the current division landscape.
He may just be a Hall of Very Good guy. I'm not convinced he's a Hall of Famer, and if he is a Hall of Famer, I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. But yeah, it was. He still showed a lot of grit in this fight, and I give him a lot of credit on a really good career, made a lot of money, had a fan-friendly style, the jab, the fundamentals. But it's time to say some of those uncomfortable truths about Spence. And yeah, it was and then, you know, Tszyu didn't look that great either. I mean, he still has more in the tank left than Spence. And now at middleweight, it's smart that he's fighting at middleweight because there's no action for him at 54. The waters are too deep with the 3-headed monster of Ortiz, Fundora, and Boots. But, you know, maybe he could fight Landy Lara, you know, send another guy home if he's capable of that, or he'd walk into a bunch of straight left hands by Lara. But good on Tszyu. He got the job done as a slight underdog at home and makes good on his "this is my dad's Julio Cesar Chavez" fight, you know, beating a big name well past his prime.
Fan in Boxing reflects on the privilege of witnessing Errol Spence Jr. at the absolute peak of his powers throughout a memorable career. He expresses genuine gratitude for the former champion's legacy as he walks away from the sport on his own terms.
What a hell of a fighter Errol Spence Jr. was. What a hell of a guy. What a hell of a career. I'm just extremely, extremely happy that I was able to watch that man fight during the time that he was during the time he was fighting, during the time of his prime. And, you know, nothing but happiness for him to end his career, you know, on his own terms, man.
Breaking down the physical realities of the matchup, Fan in Boxing details the steep uphill battle Errol Spence Jr. faced stepping up in weight against a formidable Tim Tszyu. While physical limitations showed early, he highlights the immense determination and grit that defined the former champion's final performance.
I was hopeful for Errol in this fight with Tim Tszyu, but I knew what he was up against. Tim Tszyu is a very, very solid fighter, man, very big fighter. His last 2 fights was spent at 160 pounds. Errol, this is the first time Errol fought in 3 years, 2 weight classes up from where he had fought last time. So, you know, going into the fight, the writing was kind of on the wall. I didn't do too much of a prediction about the fight. It was like, man, I don't really know what's going to happen. It just depends on what Errol comes back. Errol comes into the fight. Very first round, he looks like he's off balance. Looked like he was leaning in, reaching for his shots. Didn't look like he had a lot of pop on his punches. Didn't look like he had a lot of punch resistance. Wasn't the greatest. But I will tell you this, though, man. Errol Spence Jr. showed in that fight that he's got tremendous, tremendous heart, man. And he showed what made him such an incredible champion, man, because...
As Errol Spence Jr. officially hangs up the gloves and leaves behind a remarkable legacy, Tim Tszyu secures a career-defining victory to launch his new campaign at middleweight. With the boxing landscape taking a major shift following this battle in Sydney, big questions remain for both fighters' futures. Do you believe Spence belongs in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot? And how far can Tszyu go in his new weight division? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below, and let us know what you think is next for both fighters.